Hey everybody, it is Romania Black, and we're on episode 2 of Moriarty the Patriot, The Scarlet Eyes, Act 1. So at least a two-parter to start us off with. I am very intrigued by this series. I love Sherlock Holmes. I love the dynamic of Sherlock and Moriarty. The BBC version is probably my favorite recent adaptation because it's just so good. Andrew Scott, I believe, who plays, it's Andrew Scott, Adam Scott's the other actor. He plays Moriarty in his perfection. So I really like the idea of this blonde Moriarty. I like the idea of him being the crime consultant, him having a title. It's very like under the desk deeds being done. But I like that it's very much like Sherlock does things for the thrill of the chase and solving the crime, but there's no like ill intention or malice behind it. Whereas this may be a little different. So I'm all about a dark series. I like the idea of an antagonistic character being the protagonist role, the main character role. So that seems to be Moriarty's deal. I like it. I'm all about it. And I want to know more about the relationship between him and his brother Louis, between Albert and him, where all their relationship and dynamics came from and how they've developed, which I think will, based on the preview, we'll probably get more of that. And I probably won't watch any previews after that first episode unless there's an after credit scene. I've been told there's an after credit scene after this episode, and then episodes 3 and 4 there is not. And that's all I know so far. So that's good. But of course, we want to know when Sherlock's going to come in, but I have a feeling that's going to be at least a couple episodes before we even get mention of Sherlock, because we've got to build up Moriarty first. It's his story. It's his show. We need to build him up in the relationships with those close to him. And then we can ease Sherlock in. And I'm pretty excited for that. So yeah, let's see what happens, shall we? I'm pretty excited. It's going to suck having to wait a week between these episodes when there's a two-parter like this, but it'll be fine. So let's do this, shall we? We are going to start Moriarty the Patriot, episode 2, here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Okay. Ooh, man. Okay. Very dark indeed. Very dark indeed. It's weird that the ED we juxtaposed from, we go from like these cutesy kids with the big eyes, and it's like suddenly, oh yeah, they're really sexy in their uniforms. Especially Albert. Oh man. I'm so fascinated by it. I didn't realize that Albert was their brother. That Albert like took them in under the family. So I was wondering, because from the start you think that Moriarty is wealthy too, and it's like, no, he's worked his way up. Now the question is, did Moriarty come from a wealthy family and they died and him and his brother were cast out because he does have all this knowledge? Or I kind of like the latter theory, that Moriarty is just born really smart and him and his brother have just made their way through life on his intelligence, and that he's not nobility that was orphaned. He just is really smart and he's just worked his way up from there. I like that theory better about him, but the idea that he just has these natural talents is so good. And then of course we start out with the adult version of him talking about the horse races and the betting and knowing how to win the race, knowing how to win the bet with what horse is going to win the race. And then it cuts to him as a kid knowing, and it's all research and chance and probability and everything like that. And if you do your research, you can figure it out. But, oh man. So at first, the old lady's conversation in the street, I was really confused by it. I was like, why did she sound weird? But the townspeople don't know what William Moriarty looks like. They just know Albert, the brother, and they have there's a blonde-haired sibling and a dark-haired sibling, and Albert is obviously the dark-haired sibling. And with the fancy coat and the hat on, he looks like nobility. And so William going around doing odd jobs for the townsfolk, because he wants to and he wants to help people, is really, really cool. I really like that. And then the idea that the old woman's like, well, he doesn't look like himself because that's not Albert's brother. Cool. Albert's brother's a little snot. I don't like him. I think he's going to die in this fire. I think they're going to kill him in this fire. Something's going to happen and he's going to die in the fire. Now the question is, do the parents die as well? And it's just Albert and William Moriarty and Louis? Is that what happens? Because we have this fire in the OP. So, but I was a little confused at first with the Duchess. Because for a second I thought the Duchess was Albert's mother, and I was like, man, he doesn't look anything like his mom. And you see the dad, and you're like, oh, well, Albert looks exactly like his dad. But then you realize the Duchess is just some wealthy to-do woman that everybody is trying to get on her good side and charm and everything. And she's like, well, I think I'm going to adopt a foster an orphan, because that's the charitable thing to do. And it's so, like, disgusting, kind of. Like I have, obviously there's lots of kids in the world that need to be adopted and fostered and taken care of. But when it's framed like this, where nobility's like, oh, look at my act of charity that I took in this kid out of the kindness of my heart. It's like they're not doing it because they love the kid and they want to give them a good home and they have the child in mind. They're doing it because it seems like a good act of charity, like it's a thing. And so the fact that once she says it, the other guy is trying to get on her good side, are like, well, we'll do that too. Like it's something trendy. Like the act of humanity is trendy. Like that's what's disgusting about it, right? It's that this act of good faith, good Samaritanship, and humanity is just something that's a trend. It's niche. It's cool. Nah. And I like that Albert sees through the facade. Albert hates it. He hates the world that he lives in. He hates because he keeps going to the ragged school because he likes interacting with them, because those kids there are genuine. They're real. His brother is very fake. His brother is like totally sucked into and immersed in the aristocracy and the nobility world. So he's just acting like how he was brought up. And Albert at least has some more sense to him and seems more aware of the world around him. I really like Albert's character. I really like Albert's character a lot. Moriarty, man, even from a young age, is just like not a Robin Hood figure, but kind of. But the idea, there's so many good one-liners in this episode. I want to get to them. I want to zoom in a little bit ahead. But the idea that Albert tells me is like, you can't show servants or anything that you have those cookies and stuff from the townspeople because no one will understand. But the idea that they're making... And Louis is sick. Louis is frail. And that was really sad when he had to work out there, and Moriarty seems pretty attached to his brother. But... And even with the servant Simon, there's a little bit of that classism shining through, because the servant Simon, he's like, I don't want to think that these kids are above me. So it's like just, he's part of the system, right? And Moriarty wants to change the system. That's interesting that William and Louis, that their actual names aren't Moriarty. That's really interesting. It's like, what were their original names? I guess that's not the point. That's not what matters. But, So yeah, giving his brother the cookies and Albert getting onto him. Yeah, and so then the brother shows up. And the brother with them weird ass bangs. Oh, William. The elder brother. And then going to that school. And so and you can just see the classism at work, because William, the brother, Albert's brother, he says like, oh, you caught that cold from those people. And it's like suggesting that they're diseased and that they carry diseases. It's not cool. But yeah, so I like that Albert says that it's interesting. I'm curious. He says the reason why he was attracted to Moriarty from the start was because he had that magnetism to him, that he seemed like bigger than life. Like he could talk to adults and leave them speechless. And it was that kind of mystery around him that drew him to him. And he says that was really all there was. And I want to see, hopefully in episode 2, a continuation of that thought, because I don't think that's all that it was. I think Albert has wanted to dismantle the system for some time as a kid, and he found Moriarty as a means to an end. And he's like, you want the same thing I do, we could totally do this. And so I think that's what he's wanting to say. At first I simply regarded him as being unusual. That was all. He's like, the thing that triggered my interest in him was really only that he was unusual. But it's like, no, that's not it. He's got something else to him. You just don't want to admit it. And so yeah, then we went to this nobility party, and he's like, yeah, and the dad, and Albert looks exactly like his dad, and then we see the Duchess or whatever. Interesting. And surrounded by all these men. I think that's interesting that these guys are all... I wonder if she's single or widowed or divorced, where she is, singled out, because this one guy stands up and he's like, oh, I'm moved by your charity, and like kind of smirks back at Lord Moriarty. Like, look, I got on her good side. So I'm curious, like, all these guys are around her, but they seem to be all married men. So it's like, what are you doing trying to court this woman? Interesting. Yeah. And then, of course, Albert's mother looks exactly like William, and she's not for it. And she's like, you already have 2 good sons. What's worse, an orphan from God knows where? Yep. And then, yeah, Albert hates that. And then the dad tries to say that the acts of charity are the duty of nobility. You know that much, don't you? And she's just like calling him out on his bullshit. Like, no. Like, how dare you? It's because of her, that crazed charity crazed woman put you up to this. And she's jealous of her, clearly. But yeah, I love that Albert can see instantly through it all, and he just gets disgusted at his parents for arguing over something like this. It's kind of sad. But yeah, so then we have like Fight Club. Then we have like underground Fight Club with the orphans, where they're talking about all the bad things that nobility has done. And it's funny because Moriarty goes along by saying, like, here's all the great things that nobility does for us. Isn't this wonderful? Like, this is the way our society works. And then the kids, all one by one, talk about all the bad things that have happened to them and their families because of nobility. And Moriarty, it's like a perfect setup. It's like just feeding them all into the trap. He's like, yes, there are bad nobles out there that are not doing what they're supposed to do. And so if we see one of them, what do? And they're all like, kill him. And Albert at that point is like, crap. And there's a part of me that thinks that Albert was like, yeah, okay. Because he kind of feels that way too, I think. I don't know if he's at the point where it's the extreme of kill them, but I think he's at the point where he thinks nobility is doing some really shitty things. I love the reveal that the math equation that Moriarty is doing with them is for them to dig the tunnel to sneak their way in and steal the jewelry from the noble. I think that's so cool. And of course they wipe out the equation as soon as he shows up. That's cool. Nice. I like that a lot. And Moriarty's saying he's basically acting like Robin Hood. He's like, I'm trying to help the people the best I can by just, doing what I can, giving them equations, helping them out, offering a hand, and then you realize what's happening. It's like, And Albert's like, yeah, you could be everybody's advisor or consultant. Like, looks directly into the camera. He's like, sure. Yeah, old Thompson's safe got broken into. I love it. And then they got away with all the valuables he had in his cellar. I love it. But then, here's the thing. He had all the money he extorted from the poor. It serves him right. So it's very much like a Robin Hood scenario. He's like, well, we robbed from the rich to give the poor. And he deserved it because he extorted all the money from the poor in the first place. I love that the scenery, the atmosphere, everything changes to like a green tone when Albert figures this out. The use of greens and reds in this show are really cool because you have Moriarty with the red eyes and you have Albert with the green eyes, and you get to see that color contrast because red and green are contrasting colors. You get to see that like back to back, which it's funny because they're very contrasting colors, but Albert and Moriarty are not... I don't feel like their ideologies are opposite of each other at all. I think that Albert's on a similar page to Moriarty, just not quite on the same page, right? Not quite at the same page yet. But I think that he'd be open to being, basically. So yeah, fighting them. Yeah, if we get rid of the bad people, this would be an ideal country. Yeah, that all sounds good in theory, doesn't it? Yep, and he says, in the eyes of God, he has been taking the path of wrong to achieve a world that is right. I love that line. I love it. So it's like the whole thing, like becoming a monster to fight monsters sort of scenario, like taking the path of wrong to achieve a world that's right. It's like sacrificing whatever's necessary to get the end result that you need. And yeah, we see the brother William stabbing that woman in the hand with a fork because she didn't serve his tea properly. Like, dude, you're pretty scummy even for a kid. Nah. And he wears his tie. The brother wears the tie the same way as the dad and looks like the mom, but Oh, those eyes from Albert. Albert's like, you should not have hurt her. Like, that was not necessary. And then, of course, Albert, like, going back to his bedroom. That you're just contemplating what to do before he decides to confront Moriarty. I love that William sneaks up behind him with the knife. That William's like, yeah, don't be hurting my brother. Because I think, Louis and Moriarty would do anything to protect each other at this point. So, but yeah, I feel like Albert's totally on board with all this. He just is trying to figure out how to phrase that. And then when he goes to confront Moriarty, and there's a moment where Moriarty's like facade cracks, where he's like, he says the down with the bad nobles, and Moriarty's like, the mask falls a little bit and he quickly recovers. It's interesting. And so yeah, Albert's like, look, and I think Albert's trying to convince himself to join Moriarty's cause, but he's like, look, if you choose to fight nobility, you're fighting all of them, like the whole country, and you're okay with that. Like, I think he's trying to justify it with Moriarty that it's something that's worth doing. And then, yeah, that line, that face with him, where he does that knowing smile, even as a little kid, that knowing smile and those big red eyes. He's like, that's what I mean to do. Oh, I love it. I love it. Our lives should have the same value. Everyone should have an equal right to happiness. Yep. But in this country, that doesn't exist. And so it's pretty much the same ideology that Albert has. Albert thinks the same thing. Albert thinks the same thing. So he says, because people's hearts are twisted and which gives rise to devils. So the opposite should be true. If we cast out the devils, then everything will be great. They're kids, so it's hard to think that it's a little more complicated than that. But as kids, that all makes sense, right? Sure. And then, of course, Moriarty's like, are you going to report me or not? You're a nobleman, so wouldn't you like to see something like that? But Albert's not your average everyday nobleman. Not at all. So yeah, I like the CD. I like the paint and then making all the murals. That's really cute. I like it. But as y'all said, there was an end credit scene. Yeah, I really like this. I really like the mural that they make and everything. And then it cuts to them as adults being sexy in this cave. Like, show, okay. All right. Underneath, behind the waterfall, which, the waterfall is a really big plot element of the Sherlock story, right? The final problem. Interesting. Okay. Interesting. All right. So yeah, and then we cut back to Louis about to shank old Albert. And then yeah, and Albert trying to say an orphan with the knowledge to leave adults speechless. He was unique. That's really all it was. It's like, it's not all it was. And you know it. And then we cut to this fire. And that fire was in the OP too. But yeah, the fire that was, it's kind of like Albert's trying to justify that, like, the whole reason I became friends with Moriarty, it was really for good intentions. It really was under the best of circumstances and intentions, and things just escalated from there. Because then we see, I'm assuming that's Albert's house on fire, like the entire mansion set ablaze. And then yeah, the only three that come out are Albert and William and Louis. And of course people are like, are you all right? Who are you three? And he says, I'm Albert James Moriarty. And then, okay, so Louis has a big gash on his cheek or blood or something. And then Albert says, and these, and I'm guessing, are my brothers. Like, that's exciting because I like when shows do this. They give you like a little tease of the future and then you have to backtrack and see how you got to that point, but they don't quite explain what's happened. So that'll be really interesting to see what ends up going down. I think they're going to kill the brother though, William, or he's going to die on accident and they're going to be around when it happens. I don't know. When he was such a jerk this episode, I'm like, you're going to die. Moriarty's probably going to kill you and take your name, isn't he? But yeah, I like seeing this flashback. I really like Albert's character. I really like Albert and trying to go through his philosophy because he is a nobleman. So he is stuck in this noble situation and trying to figure out his whole stance and his whole place within it. And I like his bonding with Louis and Moriarty. So I'm curious to see what happens next episode, how this all goes down and what we end up happening. I'm assuming we'll just have the next part and then cut back to the present. But very interesting. Very interesting. So I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below, what you all thought of this episode. Obviously, it's only part 1, so we still got part 2 to deal with. But I'm very curious. Please, no spoilers, but I hope you all enjoyed this reaction. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 3, The Scarlet Eyes, Act 2 of Moriarty the Patriot. Bye.